My 65th birthday began the way most quiet disappointments do, slowly, gently, with the kind of stillness that presses on a house like a heavy blanket. I sat alone at the kitchen table, stirring sugar into my coffee, listening to the refrigerator hum in the background. The morning sunlight stretched across the floor in long beams, illuminating the dust I'd forgotten to sweep. It was my birthday, and yet the house felt no different, no brighter, no warmer. It used to be different. Birthdays used to be loud, chaotic, beautiful. I still remember the years when Ethan, no taller than my waist, would burst into my room before dawn, holding a plate with a bent candle stuck into whatever breakfast food he could find: pancakes, a piece of toast, even once a cold leftover muffin from the night before. He'd jump on the bed, singing happy birthday, in that high, breathless child voice that made even the worst days worth waking up for. But that was a lifetime ago. Now he was 28 and engaged to a woman with a smile expensive enough to cost someone like me an entire month's pension. Clarissa had perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect posture, and the perfect ability to make me feel like a relic. When Ethan said they would drop by for my birthday, I knew better than to expect the kind of celebration he used to throw for me. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was proud he'd grown into his own life. I told myself he was busy, that this was normal. But still the silence stung. I cleaned the house unnecessarily, polished the coffee table, baked a small vanilla cake, just big enough for 3 slices, and placed one pale pink candle in the center. The candle almost looked embarrassed to stand there alone. By the time the doorbell finally rang that afternoon, the cake had gone slightly dry around the edges. "Mom," Ethan called as he stepped inside. He had that hurried, distracted tone, like a man late to an appointment he didn't want to attend. Behind him drifted Clarissa, wearing a cream coat and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Happy birthday," she said, leaning in to kiss the air beside my cheek. Her perfume filled the hallway, floral, heavy, the type of scent that felt like it belonged in an expensive hotel lobby rather than in my modest home. "We brought a gift." "Oh, you didn't have to," I said, though the words felt hollow. "We really wanted to," Ethan insisted. He pulled a glossy white box from a gift bag and set it on the dining table. "It's something special." Something in his voice was too rehearsed, too formal, too polite. I sat down slowly, pulling the box toward me. The ribbon shimmered like gold thread. I slid my finger beneath the knot and loosened it, letting it fall away like something sinking underwater. For a moment, everything felt suspended in time. The candle on the cake flickered. Ethan held his breath. Clarissa smiled a little too widely. I lifted the lid, and the world went quiet. Inside lay a brochure, clean, uncreased, gleaming. Asterisk, asterisk, Golden Pines Luxury Retirement Community. Asterisk, asterisk, a smiling elderly couple graced the cover, holding hands as though the greatest joy in life was being tucked away somewhere tidy and quiet and far from everyone who mattered. For a moment I simply stared. My throat tightened. My fingers went numb. A retirement home, I said softly, my voice catching on the edge of disbelief. Clarissa clasped her hands together. "Isn't it lovely? They offer all sorts of activities for seniors: painting, board games, early dinners, and they have such good medical supervision. It's really ideal for someone your age." "Someone your age?" The words hit like cold water down my spine. Ethan nodded eagerly, oblivious to the storm unraveling inside me. "Yeah, Mom. I mean, we just want you to be safe. The house is getting big for you, you know. Lots of stairs. And you shouldn't have to stress about mowing lawns or climbing ladders or any of that." My heartbeat thudded in my ears. He said it so casually, like he was discussing taking out the garbage. I forced my lips into a smile, tight, controlled. "How thoughtful. I knew you'd understand," Ethan said, relief flooding his voice. "Understand?" Yes, suddenly, painfully. I understood everything. Clarissa leaned in slightly. And they have vacancies right now. We thought maybe you could start the process soon, before the wedding, so everything's sorted beforehand, before the wedding. Ah, there it was, the truth hidden behind sweetness. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He wasn't the little boy climbing into my bed with pancakes. He wasn't the teenager who cried when he got his first rejection letter. He wasn't the young man who hugged me during late night study sessions. He had hardened, aged, or maybe I was only now seeing him clearly. Thank you, I said quietly, lifting my head with a calmness I did not feel. Truly, sweetheart, to thank you. Ethan beamed. I placed the brochure gently back into the box and closed the lid. My hands did not shake. My smile did not falter. My voice did not crack, because mothers learn early in life how to hold storms inside without letting a single drop spill. I blew out the candle on my small cake, the flame flickering out in a whisper of smoke, and as I looked at my son, my only child laughing softly with his fiancée, something inside me shifted. Something ancient, something protective, something sharp. A line had been crossed, and I knew it. Still smiling, I turned to Ethan and said sweetly, asterisk, asterisk, don't worry, darling, I'll remember this gift when your wedding comes. Asterisk, asterisk, he laughed. Clarissa frowned, but I wasn't joking, not even a little. The candle's smoke curled upward like a promise. And though they didn't know it yet, the next celebration would not belong to them. The night after my birthday, the house felt heavier than it had in years. Not quiet I could handle, but heavy, like every wall, every framed photo. Every floorboard was absorbing the words Ethan had spoken earlier. A retirement home, someone your age, before the wedding. I tried to shake the thoughts away as I washed the dishes from our small celebration, 3 plates, 3 forks, 1 half-eaten cake. But each clink of porcelain against the sink felt like another crack in my chest. I'd raised Ethan in this house. Every inch of these walls had known us, our laughter, our arguments, our tears. This was where I taught him to walk, where I held him through feverish nights, where I stayed awake sewing patches onto his little jeans because I couldn't afford new ones. And now he wanted me out of it. By the time I put the dishes away, tears were already sliding down my cheeks. I sat down on the couch, the very one Ethan and I bought when he was in college. Back then, we searched every thrift shop in town just to find something we could afford. He'd been 18, lanky and full of dreams. He always said he'd make it big someday and buy Mom a proper sofa. He never did. And suddenly, I realized he no longer remembered the promises he used to make. Or maybe he remembered them and simply didn't care. My heart tightened at the thought. Asterisk, asterisk, the flashbacks came slowly at first. Then all at once, asterisk, asterisk, when Ethan was 5, he liked to sleep curled on my chest, little fingers tangled in my shirt as if the world could only stay in place if he held on tight. After my husband died, Ethan was the only reason I even got out of bed some days. I worked double shifts at the diner, dragging my tired feet home long after Ethan had fallen asleep at the neighbor's house. I remember tiptoeing into his bedroom, brushing his hair aside, whispering apologies he never fully understood. Asterisk, I'm sorry Mommy wasn't here earlier. Mom is doing her best. I hope one day you'll forgive me. Asterisk, when he turned 12, he brought home a report card full of A's. He placed it on the kitchen counter, smiling proudly. To make your life easier, he'd said. I laughed and cried at the same time, sweeping him into my arms until he squealed. His little heart always wanted to repay the sacrifices he thought he owed me. Somewhere along the line, that little boy faded, and the man who replaced him didn't remember any of it. Asterisk, asterisk, the woman who replaced me, asterisk, asterisk. I didn't dislike Clarissa when I first met her. She was polished, articulate, and ambitious, but there was a coldness in her smile, an invisible curtain that separated her from the world. She treated Ethan like a project and me like clutter. She used phrases like, asterisk, your mother has had her time. Asterisk, older people need structure. Asterisk, it's not healthy for her to live alone. And of course, asterisk, this house is too big for just one elderly lady. Elderly lady. I had been called many things, but never that. I wasn't fragile. I wasn't helpless. And I certainly wasn't ready to be stuffed away in a quiet room somewhere like a forgotten heirloom. But Clarissa didn't see a person, she saw space. Space she could use. And she had her nails in Ethan deep. I told myself he was just overwhelmed by love, by planning a wedding, by building a new life. But a mother knows. I could see the subtle shifts, the way he looked to her before answering me, the way he hesitated before hugging me, the way he seemed almost embarrassed by the history we shared. He didn't push her away. He pushed me away, little by little, and now the final shove, a retirement home brochure. ***, the discovery that broke me ***, 2 nights after my birthday. I woke up thirsty. The house was dark, and I padded down the hallway for water. As I approached the kitchen, I heard hushed voices, the kind that carry guilt in their whispers. I paused just outside the doorway. Clarissa's voice floated through the dimness. I told you, once she moves out, the house will sell quickly. The market is perfect. My stomach dropped. Ethan sighed, I know, and the money would really help with the wedding. The venue, the honeymoon. I don't want to keep struggling, Clarissa. I clutched the door frame. My knees almost gave out. They weren't talking about my future. They were talking about my house, my home, my life savings. Clarissa continued, and honestly, Ethan, having your mother living with us is inconvenient, especially once we start having children. You want them growing up with independence, not learning that you're tied down by an aging parent. Aging parent, inconvenient. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't defend me. He just nodded along like a man who had already chosen a side. I felt something tear deep inside, quiet, invisible, but agonizingly real. I stepped fully into the kitchen doorway, pretending I hadn't heard a word. Did either of you want tea? I asked softly. They jumped. Clarissa coughed. Ethan stammered. Oh, Mom, we didn't hear you, he said, guilt flickering across his face. I smiled gently, warmly, perfectly. Tea, I repeated. They shook their heads. I nodded, poured myself water, and offered them another smile before returning to my room. When I closed the door, I sank onto the bed and pressed a hand to my chest. The pain there wasn't physical, but it was real. A mother's heartbreak is a quiet thing. It doesn't scream, it doesn't rage, it settles in the bones. It weighs on the soul. He was my child, my only child, and he had forgotten me. Forgotten the nights I sat awake helping him with essays. Forgotten how I held him when he cried about failed interviews. Forgotten how I emptied my savings to pay for his tuition. Forgotten everything. I lay there for a long time, tears sliding silently into my pillow. But after the grief came something else, something steady, something sharp, something I didn't recognize at first. Resolve, not anger, not vengeance, something colder, calmer, more exact. He had made a choice, now I would make mine. ***, the quiet planning begins ***, the next morning. I made breakfast like always. Pancakes thin, soft, the way Ethan liked them as a boy. He barely touched his plate. Big day, Clarissa said, sipping her coffee. We're finalizing wedding venue details today. Wedding venue. I kept my smile friendly, but inside something stirred, a memory, a secret, a detail I had never shared with anyone. A detail that would soon become very, very important. Enjoy, darlings, I said, patting Ethan's shoulder. I'll be here if you need anything. He kissed my cheek half-heartedly. Clarissa offered a polite nod. When they walked out the door, laughing together, I watched them go with an empty ache in my chest. But beneath the ache, beneath the grief, beneath the betrayal, a spark had been lit. I turned toward the living room, toward the old file cabinet where I kept documents no one had seen in years. And as I reached for the drawer, one thought echoed through my mind. ***, if they wanted to take my home, then I would take something from them too. asterisk asterisk, not out of malice. Not out of spite, but out of a mother's sharp, unyielding justice. The kind only betrayal could awaken. The morning after I overheard Ethan and Clarissa whispering about selling my house, I woke before sunrise. The sky was tinted soft violet, the color of bruised fruit. I sat at the dining table with a cup of tea and let the steam warm my face, thinking about every decision that had led here. My son wanted me out. Clarissa wanted my house, my future, my safety, was nothing more than a tool for their convenience. I had cried the night before, but tears only cleared the fog. Underneath, something precise and cold remained. I wasn't helpless, I wasn't frail, and I had not spent decades surviving loneliness, grief, exhaustion, and poverty just to be quietly erased from my own life. I breathed deeply and went to my old file cabinet. The metal squeaked as I tugged it open, and inside, tucked between old tax returns and childhood drawings, was a folder labeled asterisk asterisk, Hartley Holdings Trust asterisk asterisk. My little secret, 9 years ago, I'd received a windfall from a small investment I made when I was young, back when my husband was still alive and we dreamed recklessly. I never told Ethan about it. I never told anyone. Instead, I put the money aside under a trust name that wasn't publicly tied to me. I didn't use it, not even when bills piled up, not even during the years Ethan was struggling after college, because something inside me whispered, asterisk, save this, you'll need it one day. Asterisk, I never knew what for until now. Inside that folder was the ownership agreement of asterisk asterisk, Rosewood Hall asterisk asterisk, one of the most prestigious wedding venues in the region. Chandeliers like falling stars, stained glass windows, gardens that glowed with fairy lights. It looked like a place fairy tales would use as a home base. People booked it a year in advance, couples dreamed of it, photographers worshipped it, and I owned it. Ethan and Clarissa, blissfully unaware, had chosen that exact venue months ago. They bragged about it for weeks. How expensive it was, how exclusive, how only people of status could afford it. They spoke with pride, I listened with silence. Let them choose it, let them pay deposits, let them dream about it. Let them walk straight into the arms of the trap they built with their own selfishness. Hash hash asterisk asterisk, the perfect opportunity asterisk asterisk, the next time I saw them. Ethan was buzzing with excitement, wedding plans, guest lists, color schemes. He showed me glossy photos of the hall, not knowing I had personally approved those same photo shoots years ago. You're going to love it, Mom, he said too cheerfully. It's the perfect place to start our new life, our new life. A life he was ready to build on the remains of mine. Meanwhile, Clarissa tapped away on her phone, barely acknowledging me. I smiled. I'm sure it's lovely. Oh, it's more than lovely, Clarissa said. It's the beginning of a new chapter for us. A new chapter. Yes, indeed, and I was about to write the next page myself. Hash hash asterisk asterisk, a visit to Rosewood Hall, asterisk asterisk, a week before the wedding. I drove to Rosewood Hall. The grand iron gates opened automatically when I approached. My license plate was registered in their system. The manager, Richard, greeted me at the door with a respectful bow of his head. He had always treated me with warmth and professionalism, never revealing my ownership to anyone unless I asked. M.S. Hartley, he said, everything has been prepared. The cancellation documents are ready. Good, I replied. He guided me to the office, where stacks of neatly organized papers lay waiting for my signature. Will there be fallout? He asked delicately. I paused, looking out the window at the garden, where Ethan and Clarissa were supposed to exchange vows. A young couple practiced walking the aisle nearby, and the faint sound of violin music drifted in. Yes, I said softly. But I've lived through worse. When I picked up the pen, my hand didn't tremble. It didn't hesitate. It didn't second guess. Because betrayal sharpens a mother's resolve more than anything else in the world. I signed every single page. The wedding reservation was nullified. Their deposits were non-refundable. Their dream venue was no longer theirs. Richard sealed the documents and handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a ceremonial rosewood hall gold, plated key, something we gave only to very special partners or contributors. Perhaps, he said gently, this may help deliver the message. I closed the box and slipped it into my purse. Oh, it will, I said quietly, more than you know. #****, the confrontation ****, the next day. Ethan and Clarissa arrived for their final venue walkthrough, unaware of the storm waiting for them. I stood just beyond the gates, wearing my neat blue coat, hair brushed back, looking every bit the polite, aging mother they thought I was. Ethan saw me first. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came to give you your wedding gift," I said. Their steps slowed. Clarissa's nose wrinkled. "You didn't have to do that," Ethan said, "but I did." I reached into my purse and pulled out a navy blue gift box tied with a silver ribbon. "For you," I said, handing it to Ethan. He smiled, confused, and opened it. His smile vanished. Inside the box sat the cancellation notice, the voided contract, a copy of the trust deed showing I owned the venue, and the small golden key. Ethan's face paled. "Mom, what is this?" Clarissa snatched the papers from his hand. "Cancelled. This can't be real. Why would anyone do this?" I looked at her calmly. "Because I can." She stared at me, eyes wide with horror. You own this place." I nodded gently. "For years?" Ethan's voice shook. "Mom, why would you do this to us?" A bitter laugh bubbled up, but I held it back. Instead, I stepped closer, placing a hand on his cheek, soft, the way I did when he was a child. "Because you handed me a brochure for a retirement home on my birthday," I whispered. "Because you wanted my house, because you planned to discard me." He flinched. "Consider this," I said, "your reminder that I am not disposable." Clarissa exploded. "You ruined our wedding." "No," I corrected calmly. "You ruined your own wedding when you decided my worth ended at the convenience I provided." For a long moment, none of us moved. The air was thick, still, heavy with everything unsaid. Then I stepped back, straightened my coat, and said, "You will receive no money from me, no home, no inheritance, and no venue." Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. I turned away from them, letting the gates close behind me with a slow, final clang. The sound echoed like justice, like closure, like a chapter ending. #***, walking away ***, as I walked back to my car. A strange feeling settled in my chest. Not joy, not revenge, but something deeper. Freedom. For the first time in decades, I wasn't living for someone else's needs. I wasn't apologizing for existing. I wasn't bending, shrinking, accommodating. I had drawn a line not out of pettiness, out of survival. Out of self-respect, when I turned the ignition, the faintest smile tugged at my lips. Ethan and Clarissa had taken my kindness for weakness. But they forgot one thing ***, mothers do not break. They bend, they ache, they endure, but when pushed too far, they rise. ***, and I had risen. The day after I canceled Ethan and Clarissa's wedding, the house felt oddly quiet, not the heavy, suffocating quiet of heartbreak, but the kind that comes after a storm finally breaks apart and drifts away. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, warming the floorboards I'd swept the evening before. The scent of lemon oil lingered in the air. I had polished the furniture out of pure nerves, knowing Ethan would come home raging. But he never came. Instead, I found a note on the kitchen counter in his handwriting, something between a scrawl and a plea. ***, Mom, we're staying at a hotel tonight. We need space. I'll talk to you tomorrow. ***, space. I had given him space for years, space to grow, space to love, space to forget me. But tomorrow came, and he did not. By the following afternoon, the guest bedroom was empty. His duffel bag, his toothbrush, his favorite war. Not hoodie gone. Clarissa's perfume no longer clung to the hallway. They had left no goodbye, no apology, just absence. I stood in the doorway of the now empty room, letting my fingers trail over the smooth wood of the dresser. A strange feeling washed through me, not sadness, not relief, but something bittersweet, like closing a book before you know how the final chapter ends. I breathed deeply. Asterisk, this is what they chose. Asterisk, I told myself. Asterisk, this is what you survived. Asterisk, and for the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel like a cage. It felt like mine. Hash hash asterisk asterisk, a house reclaimed asterisk asterisk. Over the next week, I changed everything. I took down the wedding timelines pinned to the refrigerator. I washed the sheets Clarissa had picked out without asking me. I moved furniture, opened windows, and matched the old wooden floors with sunlight again. I scrubbed away the tension that had long seeped into the corners of the house. I found forgotten pieces of joy, old photo albums, Ethan's childhood art, letters from my husband written before his passing. They had been buried beneath years of worry and accommodation. I sat on the living room floor, photos spread around me like a mosaic of the life I'd lived. In each picture, Ethan smiled with the innocence and warmth I once believed was unshakable. He had been a sweet child. He had been a compassionate teenager. And yet somewhere along the way, he had lost sight of who he was, and who I was to him. The realization brought a quiet ache, but not the jagged heartbreak from before. This pain was different. Softer, accepting. My son had grown up, but not always in the right direction, and I had forgotten to grow at all. Hash hash asterisk asterisk, the cottage by the sea asterisk asterisk, 2 weeks after the confrontation. With my heart steadier and the house lighter, I made a decision I delayed for far too long. I packed my things, not to move into a retirement home, no, to move into the small ocean-side cottage I had purchased with my savings. The place I had kept secret, not because I intended to hide, but because I wasn't yet ready to step into a life that belonged solely to me. The cottage was perched on a quiet cliff overlooking the sea, painted a soft blue that matched the horizon. Saltwater breeze wafted through the windows, carrying the cry of gulls and the scent of freedom. The first night there, I lay in bed listening to waves crashing in rhythmic, soothing patterns. For the first time in years, I slept without the tight coil of anxiety in my chest. In the morning, I brewed tea and carried it outside to the porch. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky in gold and coral. I wrapped my sweater around my shoulders and watched the world awaken. No one needed me, no one demanded from me, no one dismissed me. I was simply myself, and it felt like discovering oxygen after holding my breath for decades. Hash hash asterisk asterisk, life begins again, asterisk asterisk, days folded into one another with gentle steadiness. I planted tomatoes and lavender in the small garden behind the cottage. My hands, once used only for cleaning up after others, were now coaxing life from soil. I joined a local quilting circle, women who laughed loudly and embraced one another without hesitation. I volunteered at the community center twice a week. I took long walks along the beach, collecting shells like small love letters from the tide. My heart, bruised but healing, stretched open quietly. Grief softened, anger faded, growth took its place. Every day I learned how to live for myself, how to breathe for myself, how to be whole without needing anyone's validation. And then, months later, Ethan came back. Hash hash asterisk asterisk, the apology asterisk asterisk. It was early afternoon when I heard a car crunching over the gravel driveway. I stepped onto the porch just as Ethan climbed out of his vehicle. He looked older, not physically, but in a defeated, worn-out way. His shoulders drooped, his hair was unkempt, and his eyes held a sadness I had never seen before. "Mom," he said, voice cracking. My breath caught. He walked up the porch steps slowly, like a man approaching a confession booth. "Clarissa left," he said quietly. Of course she had. He swallowed hard. She said I was a disappointment, that she didn't want a life tied to someone who couldn't stand up to his own family. I stiffened. Was I supposed to feel sorry? But then Ethan looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the boy he used to be. "Mom," he whispered, tears gathering in his eyes, "I'm so sorry for everything, for what I said, for what I didn't say, for choosing convenience over the woman who raised me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm begging you, please, just hear me." I exhaled slowly, the ocean breeze brushing past us like a witness. "I do forgive you," I said softly. His face crumpled. He sank onto the porch step, head in his hands, sobbing in a way that shook my soul. I sat beside him, placing a hand on his back, but I continued gently, "Forgiveness doesn't undo choices." He nodded, tears dripping onto his jeans. "My will remains changed," I said. "The boundaries remain. I'll always love you. You'll always be my son. But you will not depend on me the way you once did. And you cannot expect me to erase what happened." He cried harder, but he understood. I saw it in the way he nodded. Slow, accepting, humbled. This moment wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about healing, together but separately. He stayed for tea that afternoon. We talked not as mother and child tangled in obligation, but as two adults learning each other again. When he left, he hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'll do better." And I believed him because I wanted to. ****, a new birthday. A new candle ***, a year passed. On my next birthday, I stood alone in my little kitchen, lighting a single candle on a small chocolate cake. The cottage glowed with quiet warmth, the sea murmured outside my window. But this time, the silence wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. I closed my eyes and made a wish not for Ethan to change, not for forgiveness, not for old wounds to disappear. I wished for continued freedom, continued growth, continued self-love. When I blew out the candle, I felt something lift in my chest, a soft, satisfied release. A knock sounded at the door. Ethan stood there with a bouquet of daisies, my favorite, and a shy smile. "Happy birthday, Mom." And for the first time in years, I smiled back without pain. Because I had learned something vital. ***, sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't destruction, it's rebuilding yourself so beautifully that those who hurt you can no longer recognize the broken person they left behind. ***.